Harlem, New York City. February 21, 1965. It is 3 p.m. In the middle of a political meeting, Malcolm X is shot 16 times. Within minutes, he is dead. He is only 39 years old. For nearly a year, Malcolm had known his life was in danger. He understood the threat posed by his former comrades in the Nation of Islam. On this day, those threats became reality. A voice of freedom, one that spoke for millions of African Americans, was silenced. "We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being," Malcolm once said. To be respected as a human being. To be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, rights which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary. To many, Malcolm was more than a leader. Malcolm, to me, is the closest thing to a God walking the earth, if you can understand, one voice says. Malcolm redeemed the racial integrity of African Americans. He gave us our sense of human dignity back. He restored our human beingness. Perhaps the most important thing Malcolm did was this: he erased fear. In order to enslave a people the way America enslaved black people, fear had to be constant. Fear had to be taught, enforced, internalized. Malcolm dismantled that fear. He reminded us, a white man is just a man. He is not a tree. He is not a mountain. He bleeds if cut, just like you. If he farts, he stinks just like you. But Malcolm also understood something deeper. This man had created an artificial world, one designed to make others bow. And Malcolm declared that world finished. That day was over. May 21, 1964, 9 months before his assassination. The most controversial black leader in American history returns from a pilgrimage to Mecca. "I am a Muslim. Islam is my religion," Malcolm says. "It is my intention to spread Orthodox Islam among the Afro-American community, and among people, period, in this country, because it is the only thing that truly creates brotherhood." A question follows him everywhere. Do you believe that this new message of love, this change you brought back from Islam, is the real reason they are after you? Because you're not hating as hard as they want? Malcolm answers simply, "I never did hate anybody hard." Those words hit like a bombshell. The American press prepares its biggest headlines. The priest of black pride no longer hates white people. But Malcolm still has every reason to hate American society. Born Malcolm Little in 1925, he grows up in a nation where black people are still called Negroes. In the North, the American dream ends at the edge of black ghettos. In the South, apartheid is open, legal, and brutal, lynching treated as recreation. America called it segregation. In reality, it was legalized apartheid. Black Americans were not allowed to shop in the same stores as white Americans. They could not eat in the same restaurants. They could not sit in the same bus terminals or air terminals. If a black man walked on a sidewalk and a white man approached, the black man stepped into the gutter to let him pass. That was the protocol. Ridiculous. Sick. But that was America. Malcolm X came from a family of militants and quickly learned the cost of refusing to play Uncle Tom. "My grandfather was threatened by the Black Legion," one account recalls. "It was a white racist organization. They hung him, and when the branch broke, they put him on train tracks and cut him in half. He wasn't dead yet, so they shot him." When Malcolm's grandmother tried to collect insurance, the company refused, claiming it was suicide. She had to prove it was murder, something impossible in Michigan in the 1930s for a black woman against white men. She suffered a nervous breakdown. The state institutionalized her. The children were separated, one of them Malcolm's father. From early on, Malcolm was a rebel. Soon, a delinquent. A drug user. A burglar. He is sentenced to 8 years in prison for breaking and entering. Behind bars, Malcolm encounters the Nation of Islam, a sectarian African-American splinter group blending Islamic ideas with mysticism and mythology. Its leader, Elijah Muhammad, presents himself as the messenger of Allah. The message is apocalyptic: the kingdom of heaven is near. The white man is a demon whose time is ending. The black man, a superior being, will rule the world. Elijah Muhammad teaches that most of the Bible is prophecy, not history, visions of what will happen, not what already has. Malcolm accepts this completely. He begins to see himself prophetically, as Paul. He sees Elijah Muhammad as Jesus. Because of this belief, Malcolm speaks and acts with a power and certainty beyond ordinary conviction. He travels the country preaching, building the organization, growing the movement. Former Nation of Islam members Donnie Williams and Harold Hyman remember the early days in Philadelphia. "This is the house he lived in when he moved here," one says. We met him at the train station coming from New York. We brought him straight here. This is where he stayed. When Malcolm spoke of Elijah Muhammad, he rarely used the name without the title, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was deeply dedicated. Dedicated to Elijah Muhammad. Dedicated to progress. Dedicated to uplifting African Americans. Dedicated to bringing Elijah Muhammad to the attention of the American public. Elijah Muhammad's own son later called Malcolm the perfect follower. And those who knew him agreed. In the 1950s, Malcolm X's rise does not go unnoticed, especially by other civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. To Malcolm, King and his circle are bourgeois nobodies, men who have sold out to the white establishment. Malcolm wants transformation, not reform. Where King speaks of nonviolence, Malcolm advocates self-defense. Where King dreams of integration, Malcolm calls for political and economic independence. Two visions. One struggle. And one man whose voice would soon be taken, but never erased. As spokesman for the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X calls for complete racial separation, and for the creation of an independent black state. In the ghettos, his words are often heard as a call for revenge. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that God is now about to establish his kingdom on this earth, Malcolm explains, a kingdom based upon brotherhood and peace. But, he says, the white man stands against brotherhood and peace. History proves it. Nowhere has he been brotherly toward anyone, except when he could use them, exploit them, oppress them, and force them to submit. Because of this history, Elijah Muhammad teaches that the white man is unqualified to live in a kingdom of brotherhood. And so, he says, God will eliminate that particular race from the earth. For many outside the movement, Malcolm's words are shocking. I was in the civil rights organization, one woman recalls, and the first time we heard Malcolm speak, everyone said, racist. The first time I went to the mosque, I almost peed in my pants. I was so scared. I thought the FBI or somebody was going to come in and arrest these people. She remembers deciding she had to speak to him. I'm so short. I was able to get through the crowd, past his bodyguards. His back was to me, and I tapped him on the back. I said, Mr. X, I don't agree with most of what you said. But I thank you for it. There were some things I agreed with, but not most of it. Malcolm turned around. He looked at me with those amazing eyes, eyes that pierced your brain. They startled you. They pierced your eyes, your heart. And he said quietly, one day you will, my sister. White America soon gives a face to the rebellious voice rising from the ghettos. Malcolm Little becomes Malcolm X. A reporter asks him, what is your real name? Malcolm X. Is that your legal name? As far as I'm concerned, it is. Would you mind telling me your father's last name? My father didn't know his last name, Malcolm replies. He got his last name from his grandfather. His grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery. Soon, you hear the name Malcolm X everywhere, on the radio, on television, in the newspapers. Having mastered the media, Malcolm articulates a position America can no longer ignore. We will not stand by quietly for apartheid and tyranny to be exercised upon our people. Then, on May 19, 1964, returning from Mecca, Malcolm X changes course. He adopts a new standpoint, a new vision of the world and of relationships between races, far removed from the teachings of the Nation of Islam. Gradually, my father saw true Islam, his daughter recalls. Asians, Europeans, Africans, all sitting together. He could sit with them and feel no resentment. He made his Hajj, and it completely changed his life. He finally understood that this wasn't just a civil rights issue between black and white people in America. It was a human rights issue. But questions follow him. Is this a true revelation? Or is Malcolm, ever the tactician, pursuing another strategy? Brother Malcolm was not an idiot, one observer says. He knew black people could not function in a world all by themselves. He knew alliances were necessary to get things done. I don't believe Malcolm would ever have changed to the point where he trusted white people. But alliances, yes. By May 1965, Malcolm needs those alliances more than ever. He returns to the United States isolated. Cut off from the Nation of Islam. Watched by the government. Hounded by enemies. So he builds something new. The Organization of Afro-American Unity. After a press conference, Malcolm and Abdullah Razak go downtown and rent office space in the Teresa Hotel, on the second floor. In his press release, Malcolm makes his position clear. He still believes Elijah Muhammad's solution, separation, is the best solution for African Americans. And he will work with whoever, whenever, and however he can. He begins receiving support from newly independent African nations. His goal is ambitious: to unite black people in Africa and America against Western oppression. They say the most powerful bloc in the United Nations is the African-Asian bloc, he explains. These nations are poor, but they carry more weight than rich nations. Why? Because no matter how wealthy America is, she has only one vote. You have to understand this, Malcolm says. The ballot is as powerful as the bullet. At least they are both important. If you don't use the ballot, you're going to have to use the bullet. The Audubon Ballroom becomes the center of his movement. This is where he held his meetings, one member recalls. Usually on Sundays. There would be 500 to 600 people every time Malcolm spoke. The energy was electric, especially for members of the OAAU and Muslim Mosque Incorporated. He also brought international revolutionaries to the stage, people like Mohammed Babu, leader of the Zanzibar Revolution. Malcolm's influence now stretches far beyond the United States. Ironically, isolated and independent, Malcolm X becomes even more dangerous to his enemies. 2 months earlier, he had broken with the Nation of Islam. When did things begin to fall apart between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad? When Ronald Stokes was killed. Pure and simple. April 27, 1962. Los Angeles. Ronald Stokes, a member of the Nation of Islam, is shot dead during a police check, hands in the air. The check is unlawful. The killing sparks outrage. Elijah Muhammad responds forcefully, writing, "You see these men, these are Muslims. These are the fruits of Islam. If you kill one of them, you must die. You must be murdered, because they are the best of Islam." Fears of escalating violence spread. True to his beliefs, Malcolm visits the scene. "We do not endorse Martin Luther King's philosophy of turning the other cheek," he warns. "We do not turn the other cheek to anyone. And it should be known that any time these brothers are attacked, when they know they are in the right, they have the right to retaliate, to the fullest extent of their ability, with the help of our God." But the Nation of Islam backs away. They issue only a mild protest, and publicly discredit Malcolm. Forced to retreat, Malcolm is made to turn the other cheek. For many inside the Nation of Islam, the timing is perfect. His popularity is growing too fast. He was speaking Elijah Muhammad's words, one insider says, but if you ever listen to Elijah Muhammad speak, he was weak, feeble. His speeches were lame. He was sickly. He needed a speaker. And then came my father, charismatic, articulate, stunning, handsome. He excited women during his presentations. Some even had orgasms in the audience. You could see it. That's the level of charisma Malcolm had. But jealousy wasn't the only problem. The Nation of Islam was also sinking into hypocrisy, and an unhealthy love of money. "I wasn't trying to get the gift myself," Elijah Muhammad once said. "I just wanted you to see how righteous people value wealth. They don't value gold and silver the way you do. They build homes out of it. A whole mosque, nothing but gold." Meanwhile, money collected from rank-and-file members in Chicago funded lavish lifestyles. Fine clothes. Fancy cars. Big homes. Malcolm spoke out against this constantly. In 1962, when Elijah Muhammad became seriously ill and many thought he would die, newspapers speculated that Malcolm X would be the logical successor. That's when the family stepped in. They had too much invested. They were about to lose their cash cow. Elijah Muhammad had once viewed Malcolm as his seventh son. Now, they did everything they could to destroy that bond. A single pretext is all it takes to seal the divide. November 22, 1963. President John F. Kennedy is assassinated. Elijah Muhammad immediately forbids members of the Nation of Islam from commenting on the killing. The messenger fears offending a significant portion of the black community that had supported the Democratic president. Malcolm X ignores the order. Once again, and this time once too many, he makes headlines. A reporter asks him, "What do you think of President Kennedy's assassination?" Malcolm responds by speaking about Kennedy's actions, this, that, and the other. Then he says, "The assassination was a case of chickens coming home to roost. And chickens coming home to roost never made me sad. Chickens coming home to roost always made me glad." Those were his exact words. "I was there," one man recalls. "I was officiating at the Manhattan Center. I called Malcolm and told him reporters were outside. I asked him, 'Do you want them here, or should we put them out?' Malcolm replied, 'Don't put them out, but don't let anyone else in.' This is how the white propaganda establishment twisted it. Their spin was simple: Malcolm X hates white people, and is glad the president is dead. That was never what he meant. What Malcolm was saying was this: when a global oppressor spends centuries colonizing, exploiting, suppressing indigenous people, creating wars, deciding who gets medicine, who gets aid, and who doesn't, eventually, that violence comes back. It bites you. The Nation of Islam reacts quickly. 2 weeks later, Malcolm X is suspended as spokesman. Most people think it's temporary, 90 days, then he'll be back. But before the 90 days are even up, the whispers begin. Don't call him Malcolm anymore. Call him Red. He was never really with the messenger. Yes, he ought to be killed. Killed? One man responds. That's unacceptable. He manages to reach Malcolm and warns him. Malcolm laughs. He says nobody is going to kill him. He says he isn't a Sunday Muslim. He reminds them he gave 12 years of his life to the organization. But the talk only escalates. Soon, the message spreads across Nation of Islam mosques. This is it. They begin chanting that Malcolm's name should never again be spoken inside the mosque. I just couldn't understand it, one follower says. They dropped him like a hot potato. He did much of the work we benefit from today. I couldn't understand how they turned on him like he was nothing. That's when I knew it was time to leave, unless someone could truly explain what was going on. The signs grow darker. Death threats increase. Hang-up calls. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to blow up your house. This is before the house is bombed. The FBI and the Secret Service refuse to provide protection. Tensions between Malcolm's supporters and the Nation of Islam continue to intensify. Malcolm decides he has to strike back. In June 1964, he goes on the offensive. Elijah Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, has a penchant for young girls, Malcolm says. They're afraid I'll tell the real reason I left the black Muslim movement. I never told it before. I kept it to myself. The truth is this: Elijah Muhammad is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls. 6 teenage girls. His private secretaries. Malcolm knew about them. The girls had nothing to do with Malcolm splitting, one insider says. I knew about the girls. There were rumors as early as 1958. At least 2 of the girls had been Malcolm's former girlfriends. One of them, Evelyn, had been his fiancée. Malcolm knew the stories. He knew the truth. The reason the girls became public was strategic. Malcolm needed leverage. He wanted a bastardy suit filed against Elijah Muhammad. In Phoenix, Arizona, the girls decide to go to Los Angeles, where one of them lives. The best they can manage is a Sunday. The only thing they secure is a notarized statement, signed by 2 of the girls, declaring Elijah Muhammad the father of their children. Elijah Muhammad's entourage is humiliated. The strategy becomes clear. Malcolm X must be silenced. There were times Uncle Malcolm was in Los Angeles, one relative recalls. I can't remember exactly where, maybe a radio show. While he was driving, black men, not white, would chase his car, try to grab the door, even point guns at him. They never fired. We had it happen in Boston, too. They thought Uncle Malcolm was with us. We were cut off in the tunnel to the airport by 2 or 3 cars. They thought he was in the car. Fortunately, I had a shotgun. The goal wasn't just to kill Malcolm. It was to break him. Because of his deep emotional attachment to Elijah Muhammad, and because mental illness ran in his family, his mother had been institutionalized, they hoped constant fear would push him over the edge. Drive him insane. Malcolm X is now a marked man. In August 1964, 7 months before his death, he travels to Cairo for an OAAU summit. There, he survives an attempted assassination. He is poisoned. At the table of Abdel Nasser. Poisoned. The waiter who served the food is never found. Later reports claim there was enough poison in his system to kill 10 men. Malcolm survives, but he is weakened. Who planned this bizarre attempt remains unknown. It seems unlikely the Nation of Islam could have organized such an operation so far from home. So the question lingers, who else wanted Malcolm X dead? 6 months later, another unsettling incident. February 9, 1965. Malcolm lands in Paris, and is refused entry into France. Why? Were French authorities warned of an imminent attack and trying to prevent it? Did external pressure influence the decision? Or did the Paris police chief, Maurice Papin, simply reject the presence of an African-American agitator? The incident fuels endless speculation. When Malcolm returns to the United States, several friends meet him at Kennedy Airport. Riding back into the city, he says something strange. I've come to realize I made a mistake. I recently discovered that my problems are not coming from Chicago. They ask him, then where are they coming from? He points south. Washington. It's the last time one of them sees him. I was near tears, he says. Near tears. Malcolm tells him to leave the country, because no one can be trusted. He is deeply shaken by what he believes is a government plan to destroy black leadership. A plan to destroy black leaders. Since his break with the Nation of Islam, Malcolm begins reaching outward, making statements and gestures that suggest a willingness to work with other political forces. In doing so, he edges closer to his former sworn enemy, Martin Luther King Jr. The possibility of unity between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King terrifies the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover writes an infamous internal memo in 1965 or 1966. It is called the Black Messiah. Above all else, Hoover writes, we must stop the rise of a single black messiah who could unite all black people in the United States. Selma, Alabama. February 1965. 3 weeks before Malcolm X is assassinated. Martin Luther King campaigns in a state still deeply entrenched in segregation. Our campaign here in Selma, King says, is to do one simple but profoundly important thing, to secure the right to vote for Negroes. A sheriff interrupts. I order you to disperse, or you are under arrest for contempt of court. King responds calmly. Shall we stand in prayer until the time is given for us to disperse, by this sheriff, breaking Judge Thomas's order? 3 weeks later, Malcolm X will be dead. What begins as an operation turns into a riot. The Reverend himself is arrested. Once again, Malcolm X makes headlines. He travels to Selma, Alabama, to support Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm meets with Coretta Scott King. He tells her plainly, I am not here to foment discontent. I'm here to support your husband. I respect Dr. King, and I want you to understand that my role is to be the left wing of this movement, to frighten white America into negotiating with Dr. King. Malcolm and Dr. King speak on the phone for 2 hours. It is known that Dr. King sends his lawyer to Malcolm's meetings focused on bringing the United States before the United Nations on charges of genocide against African Americans. To accuse the United States of genocide in the middle of the Cold War would be catastrophic for America's global image. But Malcolm X is determined to pursue it. Through his relationships with African governments, he opens a second diplomatic front. Let me tell you what I believe really sealed his doom, one observer says. The United States. Belgium. I think England. I don't know if France was involved. There was a major situation unfolding in the Congo. Western troops were sent in, supposedly to protect white nuns who were being threatened by African savages, as they liked to call them. Because of groundwork Malcolm laid at OAU meetings, 2 African diplomats at the United Nations raised an unprecedented challenge. They said, if the United States has the right to invade the Congo to protect white nuns, then who's to say we don't have the right to militarily assist African Americans in Mississippi, who are being killed? This was unheard of. February 14, 1965. 2 o'clock in the morning. Unidentified individuals throw Molotov cocktails into Malcolm X's home. A disturbing coincidence, perhaps. Suspicion immediately falls on the Nation of Islam, the obvious suspect, especially since for months the organization had claimed the house belonged to them. Malcolm is furious. He says things that directly incriminate the nation, believing they attacked his home while his family was inside. He is forced to flee the burning house. His wife hands the children out through the windows. He is standing outside in his underwear. The investigation into the fire barely begins. 1 week later, Malcolm X is dead. It was obvious his life was in danger. He felt it. He was human. He tried to do what he could, but there was immense pressure, strain, fear for his wife and children, anxiety over what he would leave behind. When the nation expelled him, they stripped him of everything. They tried to take it all. I remember asking him, one friend says, can you please just go somewhere else? Exile yourself? It was naive, but everyone could see what was coming. He answered, the forces can get you anywhere in the world. His mother pleaded with him constantly. Leave now, she said. Come back later. Fight another day. But Malcolm's sister Ella asked him directly, what would Malcolm X look like running? Ella, he answered, what would I look like running? I'm angry, she later says. At him. At myself. At all of us. Because we didn't do better convincing him. And yet, he was right. He had a purpose. I admire him and Dr. King. These are two men who changed history. They knew. And they did not run. Even 40 years after his death, some of Malcolm's choices still haunt those closest to him. One of them was his refusal to prioritize his own safety. Before the final meeting, his team holds a discussion. Malcolm listens carefully to everything said. Then he decides, no one is to be searched. Even after his house had been bombed. No one is to be searched. He wanted to distance himself from the Nation of Islam's image, where everyone entering was searched. He wanted to attract people, not intimidate them. Looking back, many believe the organization should have overruled him. The President of the United States doesn't control his own security, one man says. But Malcolm said no, and that was final. He often said, I'm a walking dead man. He had a premonition that he would not live through the year. That he was going to die. Why he refused security searches remains impossible to understand. It was a mistake. February 21, 1965. Like every Sunday afternoon, Malcolm X goes to the Audubon Ballroom. Just before 3 p.m. he climbs the steps to the podium. Malcolm had a signal phrase he used when he was ready to speak. He would say, make it plain. That meant he was ready to take the podium. That day, he said it. Make it plain. Benjamin Goodman steps forward and announces, I now bring you a brother who will lay down his life for you, because he so deeply loves his people. I bring you Minister Malcolm X. Malcolm steps onto the stage and greets the audience. Suddenly, commotion near the front. Young men arguing. Get your hand out of my pocket. Something like that. Malcolm stops. Steps out from behind the podium. Leans forward. Raises his hand. Cool it, brothers and sisters. Those are the last words he ever speaks. He is looking toward the disturbance, then the shotgun blast. Boom. Malcolm X is struck in the chest. Seconds later, 2 more men stand and fire. His body is riddled with bullets. 16 shots tear through his heart and aorta. When the shotgun blast hits, he straightens. His hand comes up. He stands erect. He doesn't move. The gunfire continues for several seconds, then stops. Malcolm collapses backward. His head slams into the floor. A loud crash. That's when I knew, one witness says. He couldn't have survived that. El-Shabazz is seated near the front. Malcolm had not wanted her at previous meetings, but he allowed her and the girls to attend this one. One image remains burned into memory, Atala's face. Red. Screaming. Terrified. Someone jumps onto the stage. Mary Kochiyama is already there, cradling Malcolm in her arms. His shirt is open. Bullet holes everywhere. He is gasping for air. I remember thinking, one person recalls, he's going to die. There are pellet wounds, about 8 of them, each large enough to fit a fingertip. There is no blood visible. It has drained elsewhere. They watch him bleed out. They watch the life leave him. His skin turns white. He has exsanguinated. After things quiet down, people gather around him. Betty kneels over his body. She is a nurse. She tries mouth-to-mouth. Tries resuscitation. Then she looks up and says, Muriel. He's gone. And I'm pregnant. Taking advantage of the chaos, the assassins begin to run. One of Malcolm X's bodyguards fires his weapon and strikes one of the 3 men in the leg. The crowd surges forward, ready to tear the killer apart. He is saved only by the arrival of the police. He is later identified as Thomas Hagen, a member of the Nation of Islam. I stood right by that tree, one witness recalls, right where the car is. Medical attendants from the nearby medical center refuse to cross the street when they are called. People run across the street themselves, begging medics to come, but they refuse. A stretcher has to be brought over manually. They place Malcolm on the stretcher. They wheel him across the street into the medical center. When we got him there, the witness says, they took one look at him and said he was dead. They do not open his chest. They do not attempt resuscitation. They do not use electric shock. Nothing. He was completely dead by the time he arrived. Can you imagine a hospital refusing to cross the street, the witness asks, to help a man shot as many times as Malcolm was? They wouldn't do it. We had to do it. That's something that's never left my mind. Police appear in photographs taken at the scene, but they do nothing. Absolutely nothing. The bitter irony, the 2 men who pushed the hospital gurney are arrested, detained, and released, for stealing hospital property. It makes no sense. I turned on the radio, another person remembers. The announcer said Malcolm X had been shot and was dead. The way he said it, So derogatory. I screamed. I dropped my coffee. I fell to the floor and sobbed. If anyone ever taught us who we were, what it meant to be black, what it meant to be human, it was Malcolm. The next day, February 22nd, Mosque number 7 is set on fire. Are Malcolm X's followers avenging their fallen leader? Harlem fills with rumors. But the FBI is also suspected of attempting to provoke violence between factions. Conspiracy, or provocation. Even today, the question remains, who ordered Malcolm X's assassination? With Thomas Hagen's arrest, the involvement of the Nation of Islam is no longer in doubt. But disturbing details from that day raise serious questions. Normally, the NYPD heavily covered Malcolm's speeches at the Audubon Ballroom, 20 to 24 officers present. On this day, there are only 2. They are stationed in the Rose Ballroom on the 2nd floor, physically as far from the Grand Audubon Ballroom as possible. Some believe police had been informed by the FBI that the murder was going to happen, and deliberately stayed back to facilitate it. Malcolm's bodyguard insists he struck 2 assassins. Hagen is captured by the crowd, but the second gunman escapes. Herman Ferguson is outside the Audubon Ballroom at that exact moment. He sees a police officer escorting a man wearing an overcoat and a fez. The man is bent over, clearly in pain, likely wounded in the stomach. The officer places him in the back seat of a car. Ferguson hears the officer say to the driver, "Let's get out of here." He expects the car to turn across the street, to the hospital. Instead, the driver straightens the wheel and drives straight down 166th Street. The car disappears. Ferguson never sees it again. To this day, it troubles him. Did the FBI help facilitate Malcolm X's murder? The investigation, or what many call a parody of one, leads to the arrest of 2 Nation of Islam members weeks later, Norman Butler and Thomas Johnson. Both are known to police for minor crimes. But their involvement makes little sense. Thomas Johnson regularly delivered groceries to Malcolm and Betty Shabazz's home. He had been a chauffeur for Malcolm. People in Malcolm's entourage would have recognized him instantly and stopped him at the door. He never would have gotten into the Audubon Ballroom. When questioned, Ferdinand Cavallero asks a witness, "Can you prove Norman Butler and Thomas Johnson were not in the Audubon?" The witness responds, "No. Because I was in the Audubon Ballroom. The only way to prove they weren't there would be to be with them somewhere else, and I wasn't." What kind of question is that? In his sworn statement, Thomas Hagen insists Butler and Johnson were not involved. It changes nothing. In 1966, Butler and Johnson are sentenced to 20 years in prison. Hagen receives life. 11 years later, Hagen reveals the real names of his accomplices, both Nation of Islam members. To this day, neither has faced justice. 1 week after Malcolm X's death, 22,000 people gather in silence to honor him. All of Harlem mourns its lost son. February 27, 1965. Malcolm X's body is taken to Hartsdale Cemetery in Queens. 1,500 people follow the hearse, closely surveilled by the FBI and NYPD. "We saw helicopters everywhere," one family member recalls. Governor Rockefeller had roads blocked from New York City to the cemetery. There were snipers, police cars, agents everywhere. My mother and I rode in the funeral car, with FBI and state agents alongside us. My mother was carrying a gun and a hand grenade. This is how we lived. We assumed someone would try to kill us, or Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty didn't even know. If anyone tried anything, everyone in that car was going. I never told my mother I would be a pallbearer. She was always afraid when I was involved with Brother Malcolm. I walked in front of the coffin, carrying it to the grave. It was the saddest day of my life, up until then. I remember carrying the casket with Peter, placing it into the car. Everyone wanted to touch it, to hold on to it. I stepped back and let them. That was their moment. For us, we had him when he was alive. When asked if justice is still desired for his murder, the answer is immediate. Absolutely. Always. We know who did it. Some low-level people were punished, but not everyone. There are 50,000 pages of FBI files. After the Freedom of Information Act, we were supposed to receive them. What we got were pages blacked out, because some people are still alive. I want those pages unblackened. It will happen. Karma will get them one way or another. I won't waste my energy chasing them, but do I wish them well? No. 40 years later, Malcolm X remains an inspiration, for African Americans, for women, for sexual and racial minorities around the world. Today, as ever, Transforming society means unsettling it. Shaking it. By any means necessary.